3, 2, 1, go.
We've chosen a hug, and you've already seen that. It's a hug that is created by two dancers, choreographers from Lagos, the wonderful brothers Ebidum, and who then have made their image and their body be processed by a wonderful French artist of AI who's called Rémi Mollet, and we're going to be talking a lot about hugs tonight. We're going to be talking about the union between bodies and with the nature, with technology. To welcome you, it's a hug for all of you people that are sitting in this auditorium tonight at the Guggenheim Bilbao Museum. Welcome, everybody. Let's have a big round of applause for ourselves. And let's have another applause for the people that are following us from home, from that camera. Welcome, everybody, and a big hug for you guys, too. It's about technology and humanity, which is the issue that we're going to be talking about tonight. And to kick off, we're going to give the floor to the people that are going to be talking about the future. And we think that who has the right to talk about the future? Well, it's those people that are going to be living in the future. So please, let's go ahead, take your seats. We are now about to present the first speaker. So everybody, please go to your seats, and there's enough space up front, in the second row, in the third row. So we are going to be talking about technology and humanity. We started with the hug for you people in the auditorium, and for those people watching us from home, take a seat. Thank you. Welcome, welcome. A hug for you guys too. A big hug for you people, for everybody. A very, very big hug between technology and humanity. Please take your seats because we are about to introduce the first speaker. And if you want, you can get ready for the presentation. And so we've decided to start off by talking about the future. Thank you very much. And we've decided to give the floor to the person that has the biggest right to talk about the future, because it's he who's going to be living in the future, a young person, the young people. And we're going to give the floor to start off with this ceremony. We're going to give the floor to a changemaker from Ashoka. Let's have a big round of applause because he's the first. Antonio García Vicente is now going to speak. How do you imagine what life is going to be like in 50 years? Right now, we have many fronts open. We have lots of challenges that have to be overcome on an international scale. But the question that I want to throw at you tonight is, what are we going to do to solve these issues? Because something will have to be done. Good evening. My name is Antonio García Vicente. I'm 16 years old, and it was some time ago when I learned that if things don't work, you have to do something to get them changed. And of course, I was not born here in Bilbao, but I certainly do have some kind of family background because my mother was born in Deusto, which is Bilbao. And whenever she addresses a challenge, she says, "Did I ever tell you that I'm from Bilbao, and if I set out to do something, I can get it done?" Well, anyway, I'm just like her, and you'll probably think, well, you at your age, you can't really get very much done. Okay, yes, it's true that I'm a very young guy for many things. I cannot drive a car. I can't vote, but I think that as of all the people here, I think I'm the one that's going to really live that future. I think I have the right to decide how I want that future to be. But before anything else, I would like to give you the context. At 6, I was very fortunate to discover programming, and it did not only allow me to have fun with my own games or creating my own games, but I could use it to learn how to learn. At Villanubla, the small village in Valladolid where I live, there were not many options to do activities of this kind, because I was a privileged individual because I'd managed to get a position at the Club of Young Programmers at the University of Valladolid, but the rest of my classmates who also were interested in what I was doing didn't have the same chances. And that's when I decided that things had to change. So what I did was open the programming club, and I was promoting change, first in myself and then in my village. And then little by little, I extended it to everybody else by giving presentations and by participating in projects, by promoting universal digital education so that we can all have access to the same resources and we can all receive the same kind of training. So this is why I was chosen as one of the changemakers by Ashoka. And Ashoka Young Changemakers, it's a community made up of boys and girls under 21, and we found the way of delivering solutions for the well-being in society. And we are ready to play our role as influential youngsters, and we want to become leaders and references for social change in our country. Okay. And I carried on with my work, and I trained more and received more education. And what I did also allowed me to provide solutions to address other kinds of problems like environmental issues or those that had to do with promoting the rural element. And that's how I addressed AI. And nowadays, people talk a lot about the good and bad things about AI. But I would only like to refer to the positive things because I know that other people or the legislators will talk about problems, and I'm sure that you're going to listen to bigger experts than me in this field. But let's talk about education, because everybody agrees that this is something that could change the world. Okay, well, according to UNESCO, if we want to obtain universal primary and secondary education by 2030, we would have to hire 68.8 million teachers more in the world. And I think this will fill up the football stadium about 1,720 times, so that you can see how sizable this effort is. And it seems to be unreachable, unattainable for us, doesn't it? But luckily enough, we don't have to do this on our own, because if we unite our forces with technology and with AI, we will be able to make this objective sound much more realistic. And there are already programs that prepare people so that they can work and with AI. In Singapore, the humanoid robots they used in preschool classrooms to teach programming to the children. These are things that have already arrived. They are reality, but there are still many, many things to get done. And the possibilities are practically unlimited. But in any case, we human beings have something that machines still don't have, and that is that we are creative. In other words, we have the capacity to imagine, to dream. AI can help us visualize our imagination, and we can put it to the test and also evaluate and classify the results in an optimum manner so that we can reach the objectives that we set out to achieve quicker. And it's as if it were a muscle. And what we have to do is exercise our imagination so that we can visualize the solutions that we need to develop. So let's just imagine the following then. We all know the problems we're facing right now with the environment. If we don't do something now, we're going to end up without a planet. And I still think that amongst all of the natural disasters we have because of climate change and because of the current armed conflicts, there are millions of displaced people all over the world, of which a very large percentage are boys and girls. They could be any of us, in fact. So if we're talking about boys and girls or young people just like me, shouldn't they be entitled to receiving the same kind of education as me? Well, just imagine that you arrive in a country where practically nobody speaks your language, and you have to adapt not only to their customs, but also to their educational system. Well, with AI, it is possible to teach students from different places and different cultures so that they can receive the same contents as people that are born here. Now, I'm not only talking about assistants that provide a translation. No, you can go far beyond that, because these assistants that are based on AI, that includes the boys and girls in the classroom and fulfilling a two-way function. So it's not only the displaced people that can adapt to the customs and traditions of where they arrive, but the rest of the students and teachers can also get to know their customs and traditions, to empathize with them, and also feel fully integrated. And their past has been taken away, but their present is horrible. But we can still do something about rescuing their future, though. And something similar can be done with students that have some kind of disability so that they can supplement their classes with their own private needs. But the important thing has to do with making AI more democratic. It has to be accessible to everybody. So let's just think that we can carry quality education to anywhere, even they are very difficult to access, geographically speaking, or where there are very little resources. Technology can supplement the work that is done by the very few teachers that are there by using collaborative learning. And I know that all of this sounds like very hopeful and very beautiful, but you have to be careful about not losing sight of reality. AI is here to stay, but it's never going to be able to replace a teacher completely. When we are children, we spend most of our time at school. And this is something that is extremely important. It's vital, not only for our education, but also for our training as individuals. So this is why it's so important to focus on the human side of our teachers, who are putting across values that cannot be programmed in a machine. And we should also be very careful. We have to be sufficiently responsible and, above all, intelligent enough to be ourselves. We ourselves must make the most of AI, and it shouldn't be the other way around, because an AI can have practically unlimited knowledge on any issue. But somebody that is intelligent, not the guy that knows most, but rather who uses best the knowledge he or she has. I'm optimistic because there are more and more young people that are imagining a much better future that is much more fair, much more inclusive, a regenerated planet and a world at peace. And we are willing to do whatever has to be done, and we're going to be using AI or whatever to achieve this goal. So this is why, as a young change maker and at this beautiful auditorium, I'm committed to taking the steps that are required so that we can achieve this objective. Thank you very much. Great, a young changemaker who's deeply committed. Thank you very much, Antonio. Thank you. Thank you very much for this future. Your mother is very emotional. I can see that she's actually shedding tears. But, well, this afternoon we're not going to be talking about the confrontation between men and machines or how the planet is going to survive, because we believe that this is going to produce fear, and above all, we're not going to be able to react, and that means that we're to be disconnected from this issue, which is very severe. Our proposal for tonight has to do with the opposite. In other words, we have to make this discussion on technology and humanity, it has to be transformed in a public debate. That's the idea for today, for tomorrow, and for the day after tomorrow. You know that this lasts 3 days. You'll probably be saying, well, we've been listening about things connected to AI, about chat GPT. Is it good? Is it bad? But why another event? And why a 3-day event? Well, I'll say because why? Well, because we want to present a unique angle that only we can present, and which is the angle of the social entrepreneurs from Ashoka, because this is what we are. So this is a very crucial element to understand this issue of technology. Firstly, an entrepreneur. We all know what an entrepreneur is. And it's not somebody that has a company. We don't understand it that way. An entrepreneur is somebody that has an entrepreneurial spirit, somebody that has a vision, somebody that wants to implement that vision and who's very obstinate and who's very obsessed, who doesn't talk about anything else and who doesn't accept no as an answer. We all know that an entrepreneur is like that. Well, that's what we are. Let's not throw in the towel. But social means that it's not about profits or money. It's not about share value. No, it's not that. You measure your success based on the effects you've created, or how many lives you've transformed, or how much suffering have you eliminated, or how many severe problems have I removed from circulation. And in all fields, poverty, education, gender justice, LGBTI rights, migrants, all of the social elements. But we also have the fact that it's Ashoka. It means that there are requirements to be met to be appointed. It means that you cannot be a social entrepreneur unless you address an issue directly. It's not about giving a sandwich to a hungry child. Many people do that. They do very well. But we want to understand the root causes of why that child is hungry, and we have to address those causes. This is what an Ashoka social entrepreneur is all about. And you can't be an entrepreneur if you haven't had an impact demonstrating reality. We're not here to talk about fireworks. We're not here to talk about potential solutions and madness. No, we're here to talk about models that are already up and and running with hundreds of thousands or even millions of people. And some of our social entrepreneurs, no, not some of them, practically all of them are modifying public policies. In other words, they have things to contribute towards the world, and they can transform the way we do politics, which is the maximum inspiration. So that means that a social entrepreneur who works with AI within this model is not only doing things well, but it's also being very efficacious and is solving a problem, and also has bears in mind the common good of humanity. That is what social entrepreneurs are about. Social entrepreneurs with the common good in mind. And we've appointed more than 3,800 in the world. Yes, we have appointed 3,800 in the world in all of these continents. For the last 45 years, we invented this concept. This is something that was invented by Ashoka, just like that. And we have applied it in this search carried out in all continents. That is, people that have that vision for a systemic change, okay? And that is in 97 countries. And of these, 112 are using technology as their priority element for work, or AI, or they use them as strategic pillars. So these are the ones that we're really interested in. And 30 of them are here. They've come from all over the world to speak to you. They've come to Bilbao. They are sitting next to you. So if you feel a sort of buzz, that means that something special is going on. If you feel some special energy, something that's moving in the room, that is a social entrepreneur. Because a social entrepreneur never stops, never sleeps. And this is so to achieve what they want to achieve, okay? So this is our proposal for you people, and we're going to be talking about this for an hour and a half, or 1 hour and 25 minutes, and then tomorrow and the day after, there are going to be spaces for something that is much more quiet and with much more time, so that we can debate things, so that you can express your thoughts, and you're all invited to these sessions. So we're going to be talking about these 112, which are hyper-concentrated sample of interesting practices. But before that, we have to officially open this event. Okay, are you ready for that? I would now like to give the floor to the director of the social department of BBK. Her name is Nora Sarasola. Well, thank you very much, Antonella, for that passion of yours. Dear authorities, dear collaborators, friends, hello everybody and welcome to Bilbao. AI is a technology that is going to be integrated into all fields and sectors, industries and activities too, as happened with PCs when they first appeared, and with the internet and with smartphones, and now it's the turn of artificial intelligence. That's going to be everywhere, and that means that it's going to have a gigantic impact, which is going to be positive or negative too. But AI should be at the service of society, and it should provide a tool to generate a positive impact, and its approach should always be focused on people, that is, from a humanistic perspective. So we want to combine the very best of AI with the very best of human intelligence. So this is why we are presenting here Tech for Humanity, so that we can vertebrate and so that we can establish an order in the sometimes contradictory multiplicity of ideas and messages, and we want to offer hope in relation to some of the indications of AI and its influence in areas like education or health, the environment, or coexistence or cohabitation. And we're doing so through Ashoka, in part because of Antonella's passion, of course. But we're doing this with Ashoka, and BBK has become a partner of Ashoka because it's the biggest network of social entrepreneurs of the world. It's nearly 4,000 social entrepreneurs, innovative people operating throughout the world, because what we have in common is this focus on innovation, and we're looking for new models that generate systemic changes to improve our society. And you possibly remember that we already did this in the past at the New Longevity Summit, and we named a social phenomenon, which is a longer life in a completely new and positive manner. And we've been looking for systemic solutions for this new reality, for this longer life, and for the demographic challenge. And at this forum, we are also presenting social entrepreneurs as a reference in the area of AI, because they are working in the field of innovation to produce positive impact, and also because they have the objective of protecting our citizens, our democracy, and our cohabitation. In other words, they have the objective of building and protecting. At BBK, at the Fundación BBK, we are working in favor of humanistic transition. And we are now looking into projects like BBK Tres Forum, where we invited a number of speakers last year, experts in the field of AI. And also at our BBK Instituto, we have Daniel Innerarity, for instance, who's also addressed democracy in our society, an outstanding philosopher, and also by funding projects, by funding technological projects like Thembot against gender violence. And of course, digital education for young people and for older people to improve mobility and also to try to reduce the digital gap. Okay, well, I hope you will enjoy this opening ceremony. And over the next few days at CUNA, the headquarters for sustainable development, where there will be several panel discussions and debates and interviews and lectures, and you'll have lots of opportunities to speak to people, to entrepreneurs, and to different organizations. All of them could become your partners. They are potential partners. Our intention is to learn together with you. It's 30 social entrepreneurs that have arrived here from different parts of the world, and we're going to be studying how these innovative solutions could be applied in our territory to see if it is possible to implement them, to see whether we can improve our territory together with you. And it's easy to feel afraid of so much noise and so much complexity and think that AI is only for specialists. But our invitation at this forum is that all of our citizens should feel engaged and that they should all be able to understand these issues, as well as the potential and risks that are related to AI. They have to understand that this forms part of our daily life, whether we like it or not. And we need to hold a collective debate. 50 elections in the world in 2024, images manipulated by AI that affect the intimacy of women and girls, confusion, incorrect information. This is the scenario. So BBK wants to defend thought and reflection and clarity and coexistence and the use of all of the technologies we have now and will have in the future to protect this Earth of ours that we love so much. Thank you very much, everybody. And now we are going to fly all over the world, and we're going to go from different, we're going to see infographies, videos, so come along with us. So these are the 112 where they have the technology and AI, which is their main area of work or which is a strategic tool for their work. And this is the distribution in the world, and these are the categories they're working on. We have 42 in democracy because there's lots of stake here, and 20 for education, 16 in economic inclusion. We're not going to be talking about these things tonight, but we are going to be talking about health and the environment. So we're going to kick off then with, well, this, by the way, this is, well, this shows how our system is structured. And it says who are the main social entrepreneurs working in these fields. And we're going to be starting off with health. And these people, these 20 social entrepreneurs, have changed the world in terms of health. And they've transformed diagnostic systems and the connection between doctors and patients, and as well as predictive medicine and databases for the patients and not for the pharmaceutical companies. So it's a complete different take. That is patient data or remote systems to look after people's mental health. In-depth structural changes that have affected us positively. We're not going to be discussing each and every point, of course, but I would like to talk about the results that are being obtained thanks to this technology in developing countries. Because AI allows us to save millions of people because it can monitor their health constantly, as well as their needs in terms of drugs. And this is one of the issues that has a biggest impact on the survival of the mother. that doesn't die when she delivers a baby, but she survives the delivery and the baby, instead of dying at the moment of being delivered, as happens in many countries in Africa, is saved. Mothers that survive and babies that are born. And this is the effect of the work that is done by the social entrepreneurs in Lagos. You can see that their faces change. They are becoming younger and younger. They know how the technology is used and what it can be used for. This changes everything in Africa. And this helps the midwife to think about AI that is associated with a midwife now, which works. And it's a nurse that is working in a Lagos neighborhood to monitor these babies and monitor the mothers and save 1 million babies. And it's called Help Mum. And Spanish television had a program on this. And for 1 minute, we're going to take a look at that community in Lagos. So let's have the video now, please. Mortality in children is very high in the case of babies and children, young children. Many of these deaths can be prevented because the Help Mum Advisor Initiative is working to achieve this, and they do so with the help of local midwives and with AI. And by using an algorithm, they can warn mothers on when vaccines are going to be administered. But they are attending to more than 1 million newborns. And apart from training the community with midwives, they also hand out a kit for a safe delivery. And this is a successful initiative that they want to extend to other African countries. Let's have a round of applause for Dr. Aguirre. He's not here, but he's at home in Lagos. Doctor, hello, congratulations. Congratulations to you. Okay, we're going to continue now. Education. We're not going to discuss each and every one of these things, but in any case, we are going to be referring to these major issues that they've addressed. Well, anything that has to do with access to education, remote access, free courses, collaborative courses, you know how education has transformed online, and this is being done by these social entrepreneurs. So these are marvelous projects that have to do with protecting children against attacks from the internet. But the important thing what that is being done in internet is train AI so that they can perform the tutor role. There are millions of children that don't have any tutors that help them with mathematics or with language. They have no parents, they have no teachers, they have nothing. And a social entrepreneur called Salman Kadni has been training AI so that to develop tutors, and he's created this app which is called Canamigo, which is in Spanish and Portuguese and in English too, that allows a kid to have a customized tutor that is present. And there are wonderful demos that you can see if you go to the website, where you can see how artificial intelligence is adapted to the child in each step. And it's spectacular. And for me, this is one of the biggest transformations. But this is a case of applied to education. And it's great to present what is being done here. This is what is being done with the algorithm to fully change people's lives, the lives of boys and girls that have dyslexia. And this is the lady, and she's a lady with dyslexia who's changed everything. Luz Rello now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much. I'm going to set up a timer. To control your speech. Okay, thank you very much, Antonella. Well, thank you very much, Antonella. I'd like to tell you what we've done with AI to help people with dyslexia. And this has not been a black box case, as it seems to be the case now. Everything seems to be a black box. We've been researching this for more than a decade. And to kick off, well, we have to go back to infancy, to childhood, and to the errors that we dyslexic people make. And these are real mistakes made by dyslexic children. And some of them are my own mistakes. I have dyslexia. And these errors, when you're little, well, these are things that we hate. We don't like them at all. And it means that we fail our tests. And not only that, but also people think that we are less intelligent. People think that we have not really paid enough attention, or that we are somewhat distracted, because sometimes you give that impression. And It also seems that we're making mistakes randomly, as if we were doing things without really stopping and thinking, as if everything were done very randomly, which is the fashionable word nowadays. No, but that is not the case. Well, look, 10% of the population has these mistakes or makes these mistakes, and in Spain it's about 600,000 children. But dyslexia is a hidden disorder. Most of the children with dyslexia don't know that they have it. And then 10% of these people have a low performance at school because of these mistakes. And this is not only related to low school performance, but it's also related to people facing the risk of exclusion. You go to prisons in Sweden and you make an estimate of dyslexia, it's double compared to the population that is not in the prison. And then after that, there are also socio-economic barriers, because overcoming dyslexia is an expensive thing. So we looked into this. And above all, we looked into these mistakes. The investigation started in not 19, no, it was 2010, sorry, got it completely wrong there. We started in 2010, and then by using eye monitoring techniques, we saw that people with dyslexia were processing errors in a completely different manner compared to people that didn't have dyslexia. So I started to compile mistakes, and we analyzed them linguistically from the different linguistic point of view, and it was thousands of errors. And we analyzed this in Spanish. I said, oh, okay, well, let's look at this in English. So, and we did this in English too. We thought, oh dear. So what did we find? What we found is that in these mistakes that dyslexic people made, there were certain trends, there were certain patterns. And here we can draw two conclusions. And I'm summarizing in 2 sentences 6 years worth of research. The first conclusion is that as there were patterns within the mistakes made by dyslexic people, it's like rules. You know that in our language there's a grammar, there's a Spanish grammar with its rules, but in the errors there was something similar to rules too. And this gave us information on dyslexia that we knew nothing about before. And it also allowed us to get to know dyslexia better. That was the first thing. And the second thing has to do with what happens when you find patterns in many data. Well, what happens is that if then you apply AI to these data, this could become something predictive, okay? And this is something that you can start to use to predict things. And this is what we did in the next 6 years of research work. So what we did was we performed the biggest study that we had until that time on dyslexia in the Spanish language with more than 4,000 individuals to develop a test, which is a screening test on reading and writing difficulties. And by using an automatic learning model, it detects the risk of having reading and writing problems in children aged from 7 to 15 years of age. But the most interesting thing wasn't that. Well, what about the patterns? Well, what happened with the patterns is that if you use those patterns to put them inside linguistic exercises, they can help you to learn to read and write quicker. And that does not only serve to detect dyslexia, but also help you to improve. So what we did was, in the following 6 years, we included those patterns in linguistic exercises, and 40,000 exercises, and we created a new methodology to learn to read and write. And I'm very excited about this because the first schools that used this method are from the Basque country, and they were the schools of Fundación Izquierda, Colegio Vizcaya, Colegio San Prudencio, Colegio Urquide, St. Patrick, the English school, and they used the very, very first version. And thanks to the feedback they gave us, we have gradually improved this tool. And then this was used by the public authorities. That is, public schools in Madrid and Murcia started to use the system. And when this was used by the public schools in Madrid, first 40, then 100 and 200, they called on economists, people from the London School of Economists, and also from the Juan Carlos University, and they said, okay, well, let's look into this public policy, right? And of course, when somebody assesses you externally, you know that you don't feel very comfortable. I said, well, let's take these 200 schools where they're using your method, and let's compare this with subgroups from another 200 schools from different locations. And they did so by using the externalized tests of Lonce, you know, that they measure reading and writing. And what they saw is that at those schools where they are using our method in the Madrid community, they significantly improved these standardized external language tests and English tests. And this improvement happened more in girls than in boys, which also coincides with our previous research, because it seems that the girls, especially in primary school, they find it a little bit more difficult. So that's an improvement. The improvement was much more significant in girls. So that means that of 200 schools, we've now reached 1,200 schools, which is all the public schools of the Madrid community, and we're also working in schools in Murcia. But why does this work? Why does this personalized method work? Well, because there are two things in this method that are different. The first thing has to do with the strengths. In other words, the exercises do not focus on things that you do badly, but also the things that you do very well. Because to overcome difficulties, everybody, not only dyslexics, you know that we resort to our strengths. The same as blind people have, that what they do is develop their ear, for instance. But dyslexic individuals, well, many of us have very developed visual memory. Why? Because we've had to learn all of the words by heart, because we couldn't use any other technique to do so. Or we have an acoustic memory that is very developed too, because perhaps other people, what they did was learn the texts by heart. And in the end, we develop strength. So one of the things that this method does is customize exercises as a function of the cognitive skills you can see here, but not only of your weaknesses, but also your strengths. So this is the first point. And the second point is that the method has a total non-linear customization. Let's see if I can explain this, because normally reading methods are very systematic. First syllable, then the word. But what happens when somebody has difficulties is that the learning of a language is non-linear. We linguists know that. You know that the different levels of language are acquired in a parallel manner, and this they interrelate and support each other. So this is what we do here. You have loads of exercises. It's 40,000 exercises, but no children does the exercises as the child sitting next to him does, because they have a unique cognitive profile. So the exercises that the tool provides are unique, and they are customized as a function of these 24 different kinds of cognitive skills, what you can see on screen. So these two hypotheses is what we're working on most now, to see if it is because of that or otherwise, or the opposite. And Change Dyslexia, it is a social company. And I'm an Ashoka Fellow since 2014, and it's been 400,000 children that have gained access to detective free of charge. 400,000 children in the Hispanic world. And as regards the socio-economic barriers, we also offer grants to families that have problems, financial problems, and it's now 1,400 families. And these figures, well, perhaps they seem to be very big. But if you take a look at dyslexia from a global perspective, they are not that significant, because in order to carry out our mission is that no children with dyslexia, what that means, I mean, all children with dyslexia should have the necessary resources to reach or to become whatever they want to become. But to carry out that mission, we need to have these public contracts that I've already spoken to you about. So I would like to take this opportunity, now that I'm on stage, to make an appeal to the regional ministries of education, or any person that can get us in touch with these regional ministries, so that we can do something about this challenge and excel. so that dyslexia no longer is a barrier in the Hispanic world. Thank you very much, Ashoka. Thank you very much, BBK. And thank you to all the schools and to our wonderful users of Detective. Bravo. That was brilliant. Very well done. Brava, brava. Okay, well, please speak to Luz. Well, this is an example. This is a transparent example of how things work, of how our vision works. We'll speak to Luz over dinner tonight, and by the way, a sublime dinner. And we're going to open up all the galleries so that all of you people that have come from the different countries of the world can see the works of art that are on display here. And it's going to be great to speak to her tonight, and speak to her tomorrow at Cuna, so that you can see how this system that is already up and running, that has been experimented with, how it can be taken to other parts. Now, the environment. Okay, so we're jumping from one thing to another to have a flavor of the most important things. And this is a very interesting issue. We have 14 social entrepreneurs that are working all over the world, that have changed the world in terms of citizen science. I have to first measure the pollution I have in the river where I'm living if I want to convince the government that they have to do something. So this is citizen science. We have some of the best international representatives, and there's a big expert here in the room. You'll meet her tomorrow. So, and tonight, well, we're going to see how we can prevent desertification. We have a social entrepreneur who's the biggest expert of the entire world. But I also like this field because you can see that AI helps us a lot, either positively or negatively. But look at the dangers with AI, and that is, look at this Excel chart. You'll see how many tons of CO2 have been emitted by ChatGPT-3. I hope that you all know what we're talking about here, to be created, to train it. Look at that. And compared to a flight, or compared to the life of an individual, or to a car, this has to change, and it's not sustainable. So if we're talking about training AI models or generative AI, what we have to do is change the architecture and the way we address all of these variables, because this otherwise will never work. But we know that AI allows you to count all the trees on the planet. You know that you could make a complete inventory, and you can also make an estimate of the biodiversity of different areas, and you can monitor patterns, atmospheric patterns. You can predict hurricanes, heat waves, or the use of energy, measure the quality of air, and also produce efficiency in the utilization of any kind of resource. So it's both good and bad. But what I would like to show you in this video is that, well, we started off with a hug, and this is another hug. And this is a social entrepreneur from Belgium who first wanted to save bees, because without bees there's no civilization. And logically, he was in love with bees since he was a child. And then he noticed that if we unite bees with a layer of AI, we can achieve something that is truly brutal. So he's transformed bees into researchers, and he sends them, it sounds very militaristic, but he sends the bees so that they can take from the flowers in the gardens and these places where nobody else can reach out to, because a bee can fly anywhere, so that we can get their material. When they take it back to their honeycomb, they create, he's created a laboratory, a very complex study. So with all the materials that are brought by the bee, he takes an exact snapshot of the biological situation and biosystemic situation of a territory. That could be your farm, or that could be your school, or which could be your company. So he's a bee fan, and he's now become a consultant that's working all over the world. Bakim from Belgium is going to explain his project in 1 minute, and we're going to see each bee. I noticed that the problem was much bigger, that if you want to save biodiversity and the food diet, you have to work all over the world. Pollution affects everybody. You know, they're saying, no, I only want to save bees, but, well, we have to save the bees and the future generations. What have I done to save bees? I've analyzed whatever they've taken to their homes to see what affected them. And we've noticed that they could develop a very useful service because we've analyzed in a laboratory and we've drawn up an inventory of an environmental inventory of the food they bring. And there are many companies that need to understand the quality of the environment and everything that surrounds us. The advantage of a bee is that it can go where it wants to go, and taking samples from gardens, from companies, from fields, and this allows us to compile information which normally is not available or is very difficult to obtain. Everybody can help to improve our environment. Okay. Well, Bakin, hello. He's at home in Brussels. Congratulations. Let's have a big round of applause for Bakin, please. 2. And if you want to run a test now on the environmental situation of your farm, your garden, your school, or your company, give the guy a call, because he would come along to establish information compilation plan with the bees, and it's a fantastic idea. We're going to continue now. Now, it's all about fishing, and I've been told that it's important to talk about fishing in this auditorium. Fishing is very important. Do you know, or did you know, that illegal fishing is a business of dozens of billions of euros or dollars that destroy the small fishermen, not only their economy but also their lives. So an English social entrepreneur who was a merchant sailor, Tony Long, who spent 20 years of his life on a ship, noticed the terrible effects caused by illegal fishing. And he said, well, this is something that you cannot solve from a ship. We have to do something about this. And what he did was create a satellite system, sensors. And he's used artificial intelligence that does real-time monitoring of all the ships on the planet, including those that, as they are illegal, because blind boat without the GPS connected is up to something that is not very positive, so that countries can implement effective policies. It's called Global Fishing Watch, and he explained this in this very short video. Just look at the app. Video, please.
Using GPS location data and machine learning, Global Fishing Watch built the first ever live stream map to monitor the industrial fishing fleet. At the moment, we see some 70,000 vessels. We've made this information public and freely available to the world.
Right, so you've seen it. It's 70,000 right now, but his goal is the one you can see him. It's the Open Ocean Project, which means whatever there is in the sea, free of charge. Because you know that all the countries in the world have are committed to protect 30% of the oceans by 2030. But they won't be able to get that done if there's no monitoring, if you don't have any data. This gentleman worked for the Japanese government, and there was a black location where all of the small vessels were declining, and thanks to AI they could see the pirates and put them in prison. And that's what Tony has done. Tony has a number of connections with researchers and universities throughout the world, and I'm sure that there are people here that would also like to collaborate. A big hug for Tony. Congratulations too for that wonderful work you're doing. Let's have an applause, please. You sailor, a sailor and a social entrepreneur too. Brilliant combination. But now we are going to bring along a speaker in the flesh, as it were. And it's not been easy because he's not only from Brazil. It's great to have an environmental social entrepreneur from Brazil. It's incredible. And this is splendid news. But he is the advisor to Lula da Silva in environmental affairs. And this social entrepreneur has changed the history of Latin America because he's managed to make visible the desertification. And he's convinced banks not to give money to the people that are producing desertification. And you know that what COP is, COP30. That is the conference with the United Nations, which is crucial to reverse the climate crisis. And he has created, which is what he's going to be talking about, a special connection so that millions of indigenous natives of the Amazonia who know how to save the Amazonia, we don't, can be connected to GOB. Are you ready, Tasso?
Tasso Azevedo. Te voy a poner un timer.
Right, I'm going to set up the timer for you.
Sí, no voy en portuñol que no funciona mucho.
¿Qué te pasa? Are you falling down?
No, voy en inglés.
In English.
Yeah.
Tasso will speak in English.
Yeah, so you know, Brazil is not famous for natural disasters. Like, we don't have earthquakes and, you know, huracanes and things like this. But the extreme weather events is starting to show up very strongly in the last years. So this is a cyclone and heavy storm that we have in the south of Brazil. The second time that we have this in the last 10 years. We never had that before in the south of Brazil. Sandstorms, we never saw that. The first time I saw this picture, I thought that we were talking about somewhere in Africa, that it's in São Paulo. Pantanal is the largest wetlands in the planet, and it's drying, lost 60% of the water, and it's getting on fire. And this is in the Amazon. It's one of the largest rivers that form the Amazon, and last September, you could actually cross the river on foot. So why is this happening? There's many changes happening on the ecosystem in general. In this graph, at the left side here, you see like that after the year 2000, each line here is 1 month, measuring the deviation of the temperature and, in this case, the rainfall. And you see that in 4 of the 5 regions of Brazil, basically every month it's getting less rainfall than it's the average and what was expected. So we are drying. And this is explained a lot by this process that we have in Brazil, which is almost a miracle. We have something that we call the flying rivers. The forests in the Amazon bomb water to the atmosphere, and this water moves up, stop in the Andes, and move down. And basically, most of the rain we have in the south and central Brazil comes from the Amazon. So those changes are happening basically because we have these natural recurring events like the El Niño, which is very strong this year and last year, but also because of the climate change and which is caused by the greenhouse gas emissions and the land use change that are happening in Brazil. Those two last ones are very connected in our country. So Brazil is the 5th largest greenhouse gas emitter in the planet, just after China, Russia, India, and US. And so those 4 countries, they are in this position as the 4th largest greenhouse gas emitter, but basically because of the burning of fossil fuels to produce energy and for transportation. Brazil is in this list for another reason. It's because of the way we use the land. Deforestation, the cattle, the agriculture and the crops that we have, the use of fertilizers. So this is accounting for 75% of our emissions. And the most important thing is how we actually change and move the way we use the land. It's very dynamic. So normally we track deforestation, which is not even a land use change, it's just the process. Deforestation is a process. But it's very important to understand what happens after that. How the change is evolving over the time, how much of the land is transforming into mining to restoration, restoration to reforestation, back to forest, and again. So we want to understand this process in order to be able to kind of create conditions for choosing policies and actions and decisions that make the evolving of the land use to conserve the natural resource and avoid those changes that are actually creating climate change and destroying biodiversity and soil and so on. So we create a network of organizations dedicated to think on how can we actually map piece by piece the country and understand the story of how land use is changing over the time. And so what we do is that we take the catalog of all satellite images available since '85 over Brazil. There's plenty of them, millions of images. and we process those images pixel by pixel. So the idea is, if you want to find out if a piece of land is forest, agriculture, pasture, urban area, mining, and so on, I mean, if you take a picture of a cat and you want to see if there is a cat, you basically look at the picture, this is a cat, and then you mark a cat, right? Now, here the challenge is I have to do this pixel by pixel. So it's like if you have to say, you know, this pixel is a cat, this pixel is not a cat, this one is a cat, and etc. And then after that, if you put together all the pixels, you know where is the cat, right? So we do this for not just for a cat, for dogs, cats, and you know, whatever is the animals. These are the land use. And so we do this for every one of the classes we want to see on the map, using artificial intelligence, classifying the 6.9 billion pixels that makes up Brazil. And we do this all in the cloud with several organizations working together to produce those maps. So this is an open platform where you can see pixel by pixel the story of the land use in Brazil in 29 classes of use. So in a nutshell, like I'm just zooming in the center of Brazil, and there's like everything you see green here is forest. Everything you see like yellow is a kind of pasture land when you have cattle. The different tones of pink is cropland. You get it, right? So there is kind of things you see there. So if you pick anywhere, so I just pick a point here, the blue one, and then you can see the story of that pixel. So like this point there starts in 85 as a forest, and then it was a forest until 2003 or 4, and then it was clear-cut, and then transformed into pasture. And actually we have fire there, an event of fire, twice, 2 years in a row. And then it stays as a pasture land for 4 years, and then it was converted into soybean. That's what you see afterwards. So you know that that point, which is in this property, like this code here in the top and bottom, is one of the 7 million properties of Brazil. So you know that in that property, that small piece of land works like that. So because you have all the pixels in the history, you can see the history of any part of the country, how it's evolving, and when it have a transformation, for what, and what is driving transformation in different parts of the country. So because you can do this for any part of the country, you can choose the type of region that you are interested in. So for example, this is one of the 5,500 municipalities in Brazil. So in this municipality, Sinop, in the Amazon, this is how it was in 85, and this is how it's today. You see a big transformation. It loses a lot of forest and gain a lot of soybean. Pasture is kind of like stable in the end. But you see, this is everything that changed during this period. So between 85 and 2022, when everything you see in red here disappear in terms of natural environment, there is some green there. Actually, there are some regrowth, very small, but it's growing there. Now, how we use this? So for example, the traders of soybean worldwide have committed to not buy soybean that comes from areas that were deforested after 2008. That was a public commitment of the companies. So let's see if there is soybean now in 2022 that were forests in 2008. And so you could see that in the top there is a part of the areas that were planted as soybean now that actually were forests in 2022. So the companies that had that commitment can avoid precisely the areas that were forests at that point. There's no excuse to not do it. All this information is for free, by the way. Look, we create some other tools, like this one, for example, is like every single deforestation that happens in Brazil since January 2019, every one of them, we go there and make a specific report. Looks crazy, 2,000 reports a week, but we do it because we want to be sure that there's no excuse again to not take into account deforestation in your decisions. So for every deforestation, we look for one image in high resolution before deforestation and after deforestation, and we create a report that looks like, you know, when you cross the red light and there is the picture of the plate, the license of your car, getting to your home, that's what we are producing. The same thing. So you can't avoid it. We have produced 380,000 deforestation reports since 2019. Over 8 million hectares of deforestation reports. It's like every day 200 new events happening. So some of the use of this. Just last year, over 16,000 applications for loans from farmers that have had some illegal deforestation were denied by the banks using this system. So they basically go there, oh, I want to get a loan. You have a deforestation here, not legal, stop. This avoided $1.2 billion to get finance areas that had deforestation. The other interesting thing is that if you have illegal deforestation, you expect the government and the environmental agencies to act upon those areas, to give a fine, to block the properties. So in 2019, when we started this process, only 5% of the deforestation received an action. Now, in 2023, it grows to 35%. Still far away what we need, right? We want to have this 100%, but increase sevenfold. And sure, if you do it, deforestation will come down. Last year in Brazil, deforestation came down 50% when the actions start to happen in relation to those things. Good news. Everything we do is open and for free, including all the codes that we produce to make this thing happen. Actually, one thing that I think is very important for AI is that we have to open the black box to see what's in there. So in our case, everything is open, totally open on GitHub. You can get it and copy. And this allows for Mapiomas to transform into a network that today is in 14 countries. So all countries in South America plus Indonesia form their own networks and are starting to do the same type of process, some study, analyzing the land use change with the specificities of each country. Each country is one story, each country mapping one thing that is different from the other, right? Cool. Una cosita más, por causa del tiempo. 1 minuto y 25. Yeah, so when I show the map, this map, you see that there is kind of this strange pattern where you have a lot of deforestation in many places, and there is this big green blocks in the middle. Those green blocks are lands occupied by forest people, indigenous people, the black communities, old slaves that escaped from the slavery in the 19th century that create those communities in the Amazon. They occupy 33% of the Amazon, but only 1% of the deforestation in the last 40 years happened on their lands. So these are by far the best protectors of the region. So I was really interested to understand more what they need to continue to do what they are doing, or even to increase the protection that they can give. So we make a first map of those communities. You see, each one of those dots is one community of those forest people. We mapped 4,500 of them. We estimated there is about 5,500. And we asked them, what are your priorities? First priority, in general, have the land recognition, the title, or anything demarcated, etc. And second, they want to have connectivity. And connectivity means to connect themselves, between themselves and to the world. So we made an exercise to understand how far they are in terms of connectivity. Back in 2022, that's January 2022, only one of those 5,500 communities have broadband connection. And that was a community that received a cooperation project from USAID. And only 1% of those communities, according to the plans of the government for the implementation of the 4G, 5G network, would receive connection by 2028. So I said, too slow, we will fix this. So we made another network of other group of organizations. Some of them are in the other network also, together with the national coordination of the indigenous people, the national coordination of the black communities, and the national coordination of the forest structures, as we say. And we worked together to create this project, which we call Connection of Forest People, which the goal is to connect 1 million people that live in those 5,000 forest communities that protect 120 million hectares, which is like Spain plus Portugal twice. Basically, it's a big area. Yeah, that's a large area, and to do this very fast, like in 3 years. So to do that, we have 3 components. Infrastructure is to get the connection equipment and so on, and energy when it's necessary, solar energy, batteries, and so on. we create a system where community has total control over the internet, so they create their own rules. Every community has its own rules to operate the internet, trained to be sure that they can do this with safety and so on. And then there is a digital inclusion process that includes health, telemedicine, education, a lot of programs in culture, entrepreneurship, blah, 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 and the whole thing in digital inclusion. Yeah, so we start the first installation March last year. Yeah, exactly 1 year ago. And so that's one of the first ones. On the first installation, we had 2 people, the technician and the indigenous guy, and there is just one place in the airplane. So we sent just the indigenous guy. He went there, installed everything, and then we realized we don't need a technician to do it. And so all the installations, since the first one, were done by them. So it's totally done and implemented by the communities. So they go there, they put the antennas and then put the solar panels. It's all plug and play. You can do the whole setup, including the solar panels and etc. in 2 to 4 hours max. They choose where they want to put this. Like they put this in the water. Funny, no? You know why? Because they push the fish in the morning, so they want to have some shadow. Yeah, so yeah, multi-purpose. Yeah. Let's go. That's an interesting one. That's the Aldeia Jamari. If you saw there is this documentary, The Territory, that wins the Emmy this year. This was about this community. They never saw a solar panel before, and they installed the solar panel, which is kind of cool, right? Have that. Yeah. So this weekend, yesterday actually, we completed 500 communities connected. So it's 1.5 communities per day that we are pushing. 14,000 users registered, but because every user has to register because it's controlled by the communities. But every person that registers, in average, in those communities are 3 people using because of the lack of equipment. So it's 42,000 beneficiaries there. We hope to finish this year with 1,500 communities connected, and we are accelerating to get the 5,000 communities connected by December next year, previous to COP. Look, I was born in 72. In 75, only 0.5% of the Amazon has been clear-cut, almost none, right? In 88, 5%. And now we are very close to 20% of deforestation. What the science is telling us is that between 20 and 25% loss in the Amazon, we got to a tipping point where we can't reverse anymore the process of drought, and the forest will consume itself. So we don't want to run into those risks. So I feel that it's in our generation, because that's my entire life, that we have to reverse that. We don't have to delegate to the next generation. We have to do this right now. And so that's how I see tech and humanity meet an environment.
El público puede.
You can stand up and applaud if you want.
Thank you for coming. Wow, thank you. ¿Lo habéis visto?
You've just seen a social entrepreneur. You have seen that he cannot remain in a stable position because he's in a hurry. He has an urgency. Social entrepreneurs are breathless because of the many things that they have to explain and he has to convince you about. But in a nutshell, it's this generation that has to do. We're going to finish with the environment with an example of Al Gore. Everybody knows Al Gore as a major activist, but Al Gore is now a social entrepreneur. I don't think that he'll be watching us from home, by the way. But that's okay, no problem. But the thing is that we cannot implement mitigation policies or climate change policies. We know where CO2 is emitted and who's emitting it. But before, well, we knew that because companies used to do certifications that arrived late and were mostly incorrect. I said, no, we have to certify the emissions of CO2 all over the world and create a system. It's a 1-minute demo that allows us to measure emitted CO2 in 352 million locations of the planet. It's a very complex system with satellites and sensors and machine learning. And this has been done in collaboration with lots of researchers and universities. Let's have the video, and I'm going to show you how this works. And I'm going to stand on this side of the stage. Climate Trace, well, it's a beautiful, beautiful design. Because if not, we don't even look at them. So the planet rotates, and if you want to explore any data on CO2 emissions, can you see this? Now let's explore map, okay? And now you get a search engine. If you want to do this at home, you can enter Bilbao. We thought that that was not opportune, so we've included Barcelona. Now let's see what happens in Barcelona. But everything is here, okay? This is Barcelona. And the different colors show the different entities, and we focused on looking into the largest circles, which is we have more CO2 emitted in El Prat. That's logical because it's the airport. And you can see that it gives you absolutely everything. It's data so that you can design policies. And this is a power station in Besós. So you see how this works, because everybody with all these points. Al Gore, let's have a round of applause for Al Gore too, please. Okay, well, before moving on to democracy and before reaching the end, a bit of a pause. So technology and AI allow us or provide us with access to educational and creative systems of different kinds, and our social entrepreneurs, as well as other platforms that are changing the world. And we're going to continue now with democracy. There are 42 fellows, well, that's what we call them internationally, that are working in democracy. And you can see that we've divided them into two small groups, because on the one hand, we have those that use it to build tools that intensify democracy, and those that are working so that AI will not affect democracy. And the implications are very clear, because on the one hand, technology allows there to be participative budgets, in other words, that there be greater democracy, and in the Basque country, they are using this formula of participative budgets, and this platform allows people to have a big participation in public debates, and it also helps networks of change makers to remain in touch. But the possibility of creating a false image or a false text is producing a brutal alteration for the entire democratic process. For journalism, there are journalists that have come here this afternoon to give us their support. This accelerates de-information and also produces polarization in a year with 50 elections, as has already been mentioned, in the Basque country too, and that should be a concern for us. So in the case of these 42 social entrepreneurs that are working in both directions, many of them are here in Bilbao, and there's going to be a laboratory tomorrow and a discussion on this. But in any case, let's start off with where everything starts, education. How do we educate our young people to surf a chaotic avalanche of pictures, and all of them can be fake? And it's the social entrepreneur, an Italian guy that is living in Spain with us, Lorenzo Marini, and it's an honor to present somebody who's devoted to education. This is called media literacy, which is an important thing, as important as mathematics. The name is Lorenzo Marini, please. Let's have your round of applause. Good evening. Well, as you've already seen on the map, I'm directing something that is not only essential for the future of democracy, but it's become a commitment for my life. And it's all about applying media literacy to everybody, and especially to primary and secondary school children. What is literacy? It's all about knowing how to read and write. And this is the basis, and this is something that the founders of the European countries knew when they promoted public education for all. And now, in the era of the internet, of social media and AI, We have to learn to read the world that surrounds us and also to write, because using ChatGPT is also like learning to write. And today's students have to deal with new challenges, validating information in the midst of an avalanche of data and recognizing manipulations and in a chaos of images and messages amplified by generative technologies on the social media. That's not only me that says that, or verificat. It's said by UNESCO and the European Union and the PISA report. And media literacy is the discipline that allows us to build knowledge in the midst of all this chaos. So technology should be an ally, and it should not produce new gaps or a lack of trust, because technology cannot be human unless we know how to read it and understand it. But we are not providing our young people and our adults, we're not allowing them to know how to read in this noise. Because in our program for secondary school, Desfake, we do not only learn how to consume information, but also search for it and know when it's reliable and communicate it. So this means that we have to understand that this information, we need to know how it affects our opinions and our emotions. We have to develop a critical vision of the technology. We have to learn to find sources and find reliable sources. We're working with teachers so that they can become guides that support students so that they can explore this universe of digital information. And our students ask us sometimes what truth is all about. An absolute truth perhaps doesn't exist, but we all have to find a shared truth, a truth that is related on facts and science to give a meaning to all of these things in cohabitation and peace. This is the basis for democracy. We have to find this shared truth that we are focusing on in our classrooms, and we have to fight against de-information or fake information. And now we want to take this program to Vizcaya, Desfake, starting with 10 schools. Tomorrow at Cuna, I will give you details on this, and we can think how we can launch this pilot project and make it reach out to the rest of the schools. So thank you very much to Ashoka for giving us this opportunity, to BBK, and I hope to see you again tomorrow at Cuna. Thank you. Thank you. Right, well, we are going to apply this media literacy program to children in the Basque Country. Mikel, bring these stalls out, because we're going to talk about something that is very important here, which is how am I going to correct all of these lies that surround us, which is a very important issue. And let's say that it has an influence all over the world. And we're going to learn this once again, because we're going to discover how AI creates fake news. But fake news also is very helpful to identify things too. So we have from Buenos Aires, we have a social entrepreneur from Ashoka who's impressive, who's a journalist and a lawyer, a university professor, and who's playing an active role in all the Spanish-speaking world, and is the most important person in the world in the struggle against fake information in Spanish. And she's here in Bilbao for this ceremony. So we have Laura Tornet with us tonight. And she's going to be interviewed by the Director General of Ashoka in Spain, Irene Mileiro. Good evening, Laura. We'll take a deep breath, because I've been told by Antonella that you're breathless. Yes, totally breathless. That's it. Well, it's a pleasure to have you here tonight, Laura. And we are hearing people talking about fake news and misinformation. Let's start off with the basic things. What is this all about? And why is it that AI seems to have made everything much more dangerous? Well, misinformation, why is it that people talk so much about misinformation if lies have existed since women are women and men are men? And, well, we talk a lot about misinformation because we say that it's false contents that are misinformation, those that are in circulation, especially in the social media, but also through politicians in the printed media, on television, or in the mouths of social leaders or businessmen. Why is it that AI made everything much more difficult? We say that lies have always existed, but in the past, carrying out a propaganda campaign based on lies meant that you had to use more resources. You need a certain kind of structure, the structure of a state or some financial group. But now, this is something that is very cheap. It's very accessible and can be done very quickly. It's readily available to us all. Laura, you, in 2012, well, you created Data Chequea, which is a network with more than 40 media in 19 countries of Latin America, Spain, the United States, and Portugal. And we are all trying to promote this collaboration between regional media and perform fact-checking to make it much more efficacious in the fight against misinformation. But how do you work exactly? How do you work in this network? Well, since this organization was born, there were only organizations checking speeches, 3 in the United States, 2 in France, and 1 in England. And as you can imagine, those democracies were in those days a little bit stronger than Latin American democracy like Argentina. And from the very beginning, for us, the collaboration was, well, we didn't even think that it was an option, because Antonella said that social entrepreneurs never think about pesos or dollars, but we think about impacts. And having an impact means that we have to struggle against misinformation, but as efficiently as possible. It doesn't make any sense for a colleague in Spain than for somebody in Peru or somebody in Colombia or somebody from Argentina to deny this information in different countries to gain more power. Or what you do is just copy a group of people that are misinforming by adding on a couple of details. So why did we create this organization in 2014? Because basically to share practices and to share mistakes and to learn from our colleagues, but also to be more efficient in our work. And this during the pandemic, I'm not saying that it saved us, but I'm sure that it did make our work, for instance, to reach out to places like Peru, Uruguay, Guatemala, and other countries, because these journalists, instead of doing the same thing that other journalists had been doing, what they could do is focus much more on the challenges that we checkers have and what many governments and companies have, and that is to draw people's attention, draw the attention of our audience, and provide them with the best possible information, or let's say the best data, as we say. Yes, and we've spoken about AI as an element that has accelerated misinformation, but you also use AI to fight against it too. Yes, we have talking about the negative things about AI and technology. I suppose that everybody's fed up of that. But the key is, how can we make this technology also be focused on the public interest? And we think that our history is very cute, because we, in 2016, we started to work with AI, with a machine learning system, and with natural language, because what we noticed is that we needed to be quicker without losing quality. And our newsroom, our team of journalists, were never going to make it. So what we did was design a machine, a bot, which for 8 months systematically we trained every day to see whether the forecasts were correct or not, to help us, firstly, to identify the sentences that could be checked. So what the bot does is listen to whatever the president says. And you know that he can just imagine what the end result of that is like. So in other words, all of the things that I said at Parliament too. You know that Argentina is a federal country, and there are 24 provinces, and it's therefore relevant not only to focus on what's happening in the capital, in Buenos Aires, and but apart from that, we all repeat ourselves. In other words, our discourses, and sometimes I suppose that you get bored of yourselves because you repeat the same things, and that happens with our politicians and with our social leaders and our business people. But what our system allows us is whenever sentence is repeated, and well, we've been doing this for 14 years, but it tells us, it notifies us, and we can adapt the note quicker and react again. And this, well, it repeats, repeat the lie, because something will remain. But this also happens with the refuting. We have to repeat and repeat and repeat when something is not as it's being presented. And Laura, at Ashoka, we love it when people collaborate, and we hope that in Bilbao there will be more collaborations cropping up. But you have been collaborating for some time with Ashoka Spain, with Clara Jimenez from Maldita, and you're working together. So could you tell us what is the project you're carrying out exactly? Well, for 12 years I focused on Argentina and Latin America, and since April of 2022, and in reality 1 month ago, my focus, from April 2022 we launched a pilot project, and 1 month ago we started with stage 2, which is what I'm very enthusiastic about and which poses a challenge for me. And it's a project that is called Fact Checked, that works to counteract false information in Spanish in the United States, because, as you know, in the States there are 60 million people that are Hispanic, and 42 out of those 60 million speak Spanish at home, and they prefer to receive information in Spanish. But until now, there's no good journalism, there's no top quality journalism in Spanish that speaks to the community, that addresses their issues. And Clara Jimenez Cruz is the CEO and co-founder of Maldita, and it was 2019, before the pandemic, and she phoned me one day and said, Laura, is it the same thing with you people? Because in Spain we are receiving this misinformation that was generated in accounts in the United States. Are you seeing that in Argentina and Latin America? I said, yes. Argentina had its presidential elections, and we were collaborating with 124 Argentinian media for that presidential election. And we said, look, this is a very important thing, but we right now cannot do anything about this. So she'd been the director at 10. I was the director, and I learned how to say no. So I said, or not now. So I said, that idea is worth it, so get that project done. And Clara said, look, we're going to wait. And the pandemic came along, and we all focused on health information 100%, and we worked collaboratively. The pandemic finished, and perhaps, as you saw, the Latinos were the groups of people in the United States that were vaccinated less, and where there were more fatalities. Among the hypotheses that many people didn't get vaccinated because they were afraid, as they were people without papers, that they were going to be deported. And there was lots of information of that kind in circulation. So we assumed that after the pandemic, somebody could establish a project focused on misinformation in Spanish in the United States, which is 2016, what has been a recurrent issue in the press. We have the problem of misinformation that affects the Spanish-speaking population, but nobody had done that. So I said, okay, well, let's do a pilot project. Technically speaking, one could say, well, it was a two organization competing against each other, and we never saw ourselves as competitors, but rather we believe that we are complementary. Maldita has some things that are much, much better than Chequeado, and Chequeado has other strengths. And together we did the pilot project to test 3 hypotheses. One of them was to collaborate in the United States, and we were surprised by this. But there's much less collaboration compared to what we have in our Latin American ecosystem. And there's lots of logo there, but there's no collaboration, no real collaboration behind it. And the second thing that we wanted to see, well, it doesn't suffice to translate from English into Spanish, and it was the only thing we could do to fight against misinformation. We had to listen, we had to ask people what it is they needed, and we had to fill up the informative gaps, because if not, misinformation gets inside the system. And the last thing that we wanted to test, and which we tested in the pilot, is that we also had to be present in the channels where the Latin people are. And one of them is WhatsApp, because in the United States that is practically not used. So we developed a project that was focused on collaborating and listening, and on being where the people needed us most. So, and you came along, we have to transform the United States. So I think that we have to say hello to Clara, who's just had a baby, and she can't be here tonight. So hello, Clara, from here. And Let's have applause. Yes, let's have an applause for Clara and her baby. Why not? And we're going to finish now because, as you pointed out, 2024 is an electoral year. There are going to be more than 50 elections in the world. It's 2 billion people that are going to be voting, one here in the Basque country too. Why is misinformation so dangerous at these times of elections? Well, misinformation plays with our emotions. And what many people want in an election, they want to convince people, no matter what they do. It's like the battle of we that fight against misinformation, but those that create misinformation have no ethics, because it takes you only a few minutes to create misinformation, and refuting it can take you a few hours or days or weeks. But what happens in an election is they're going to try to convince us with messages which, in a way, will make them think that this is a good option. Sometimes it is not the case. And that this will generate anger and sadness and a feeling of helplessness. So what I always say about this is that we have to avoid being useful fools. So we have to avoid being defeated by this emotion, and what we have to do is I want to share my doubts. What we really have to do is share ideas and dreams. But when we're talking about facts, and when we're talking about data, and when we're talking about information, I think that the best thing is that we not share unless we know that the source is completely reliable. And in an election, we'll be careful with that too. Be careful with that video. Oh, isn't that terrible? And I'm going to share it with somebody else because look at what happened. But where does that video come from? Who sent it to me? What is the motivation? Why are they doing that? But is it of any use if I share it, or is it I'm just going to be producing more noise in a public conversation or in a public debate that is already very messy and very polarized, where there's a big confrontation with very few possibilities of reaching an understanding? So think before you resend. Okay, we'll end with that. One final thing from you, Laura? No, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk to you here tonight. Let's have a round of applause for Laura. Thank you.
Bravissima!
Right, well, I would like to use this stool, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about what they're doing, but just to come to the end, social media as a space for hate. And this is a reality. Social media have been designed to increase hate speech. And I would like to present the work of a German social entrepreneur who's working in her country. And not only because people are victims when they are insulted on the internet, but what we have to do is create an information system for civil society. Her name is Anna-Lena von Hodenberg, and in 1 minute explains her work. It's full of hate speech, and we decided not to translate any of the messages so that hate plays no role in this auditorium. So let's have the video, please.
Wir machen alles im Web. Wir checken, wann das Café ums Eck öffnet, tauschen Urlaubsfotos aus und Kuchenrezepte. Wir kaufen Fahrräder, Kaffeebohnen, Bohrmaschinen, surfen stundenlang für das schönste Hotel auf Kreta. Und wir hassen. So oder so. So. Die Folgen: Menschen haben Angst. Davor, ihre Meinung zu äußern, davor, sich in der Öffentlichkeit zu engagieren, davor, dass ihre Familie nicht mehr sicher ist und was sie vor der Haustüre erwartet. Wahlen werden durch Desinformation beeinflusst, Hass geschürt. Und plötzlich sind wir alle irgendwie betroffen. Hate-It tritt an, um die Menschenrechte aller im digitalen Raum zu stärken und zu schützen. Dazu haben wir bereits tausende Menschen in unserer Beratung und Prozesskostenfinanzierung unterstützt. Dafür geben wir wöchentliche Workshops, beraten NGOs, Politikerinnen, Parteien, Unternehmen, führen Analysen zu Desinformationskampagnen durch. Auf Social Media und durch Medienarbeit gestalten wir die öffentliche Debatte. Wir wirken bei Gesetzgebung mit und stehen auf bundes- und europapolitischer Ebene für unser aller Online-Rechte ein. Das alles, weil wir überzeugt sind. Es gibt ein Recht auf freie Meinung, aber keines auf Hass.
Libertad de opinión, pero no de odio.
Freedom of speech, but we have Anna here tonight. Well, please stand up, please. Let's have the spotlights for Anna-Lena, please. Let's have a big round of applause for our friend Anna, please. Okay, you can speak to Anna-Lena and her outstanding work tomorrow and the day after at Gunnar. You know that she's working in the field of deep fake, pornographic deep fake. In other words, Taylor Swift's face, but the body belongs to pornographic style, and it takes you only 20 minutes to make that. But most of the pornographic deep fake, well, they're not famous people like Taylor Swift, but they are anonymous women who, let's say, receive these attacks through the internet. And she is working to protect these women from a legal and social perspective. And there's also another social entrepreneur in the room from the UK that is called Enna Hussein, who's also working to protect other women against pornographic deepfakes. Enna, where are you? Enna? 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 Enna, lights, please. Lights for Enna, please. Let's have the spotlights. So, social entrepreneurs, or women that are protecting other women. Thank you very much. And we're finishing with the very daring idea, but you can see that these issues have to be addressed. So it's worthwhile thinking from a speculative point of view. And that is that we can try to do what Lorea is doing, and we can try to fight against all of those hoaxes. But if we do not attack this problem face on, these hoaxes will always exist. There's another idea that I would like to point out that has to do with a very severe problem that we've already spoken about, that is polarization. So we're going to be talking about polarization with somebody that knows a lot, because her grandparents were in favor of Franco, and her parents were against Franco. And this polarization was not only present in her family, but in many other Spanish families. So we're going to be talking with her about polarization. And this is Helena Puig Larrauri, please. Good evening. Helena, you loved your grandparents, even though they were Franco supporters. And since then, you have tried to achieve peace in a constructive manner. In other words, peace is not because you don't believe like you have my beliefs and then you just keep quiet. No, building peace has to do with a debate and has to do with people's differences and people's diversity. Isn't that true? So the question for you would be as follows. The question is, what can we do about this? First, what is polarization? How would you explain this to a 4-year-old child? I wouldn't know, but I have a 7-year-old child at home, and I start off with one thing, and that is that polarization, well, the first thing you have to have clear in your mind is that there are two types. We have the polarization of ideas and effective polarization. When it's ideas, it's a difference of opinion. Well, somebody is against an idea, and somebody else has another idea. And this it's very important for a democracy, this plurality of positions. But the problem arises when I'm against something because this is said by others that I don't like. I'm against an idea. I'm in favor of an idea because my people say that. But when you agree with a group of people, whatever they say, and that is where we have the root of violent conflicts. Well, okay, because this is expressed in a very violent manner in the social media. Why is it that social media enhance polarization? Well, social media, or the platforms of the social media, are managed by algorithms, which is a kind of artificial intelligence, a program that decides what contents we are going to watch. And these algorithms are programmed to maintain our attention on the platform. The longer, the better. And the algorithm has to conclude what attracts our attention most. And when we are on a platform, what draws our attention, and this has been mentioned by our colleagues, well, we are attracted by things that are easy, emotional, and which come from people that we already know. So the algorithm then concludes that this is what draws your attention. I'm going to give you more of that. But what is the problem? That if I only see contents that are easy and emotional and full of people that I already know that my brain loves, I become more and more polarized because that's the only thing I see. And then the companies that manage these platforms say, okay, but the algorithm is giving you what you want. In other words, you've clicked on like, you've clicked on the heart, so I'm going to give you more of that. I don't agree, because the fact that I like easy and emotional information from my friends doesn't mean that I only want to consume that. And this is explained by Rabbi Yiyet, who works at the Daily Center. His colleague Nate Fast is here. Sorry about the names, but Rami says that if you sit me in front of a plate of donuts, I'm going to eat them, but I don't really want to eat more donuts. I want to eat lentils or salad or fruit and other things. The algorithm thinks, okay, well, if you had one donut, you can eat all of them, and that's what I'm going to give you. And this is why it's polarizing. Okay, but the issue is the social media are there to make money. They're not there to polarize. They're not subjective. Facebook never said that they want to divide the world because that's its target, or that's because what its bylaws say, right? That is not the case. It's a consequence that not even the social media is producing. So could you please explain this model where polarization is an expected consequence? Well, it's an involuntary consequence, so to speak. So now what I said is that algorithms have been programmed to keep our attention. Why? Because platforms earn money with commercials, and for commercials to sell more, they need to have our attention. So this is why the algorithm maximizes our attention. But the platform does not promote polarization. It promotes connections. Because I find that it's very easy when I think about other business models. A factory where they make chairs doesn't pollute. That's not their objective. What they want to do is manufacture chairs. But it's more expensive for them to manufacture chairs without polluting. And with the platforms, the same thing. It's easier to manufacture connections or to promote connections by polarizing than without polarizing. Okay, so what do you suggest then? What do you propose in the case of social media? What should we do so that we can be given more than donuts? Well, to be given more than donuts, we need to have an algorithm that serves a different kind of food with more variety. So algorithms could also present other opinions. They could maximize other things. So we could design an algorithm for any kind of social media platform that says, instead of maximizing attention, what I'm going to do, I'm going to give you opinions of the opinions that people from different sides agree with, or whatever you say you want. So you carry out a survey, said, look, I want these contents, and that's what the algorithms could do. They could maximize something else. But okay, but how can we convince people like Twitter, for instance? Well, that is where the problem lies. And I think that we have to think about this as we think, well, what I said about the chair factory. How have we convinced companies to stop polluting? We have creating a way of measuring what they're doing. We've created a carbon footprint. A carbon footprint, if you manufacture chairs and you have a very high carbon footprint, you either feel ashamed or you're fined, or in some places they apply a tax. And the same thing applies here. Why not create a polarization footprint? Something that tells us what platforms are doing, that will allow us so that they can feel ashamed of what they're doing, so that they can be imposed a fine or a tax. Okay, polarization footprint, to make them blush, to make the social media blush. That is a disruptive idea. But how are you going to measure that polarization footprint? How can we know how much Twitter polarizes or how much YouTube polarizes? That's brutal. But how can we do that? Well, you can do it in many different ways. And I can tell you what it is we are doing at Build Up, I think she said, which is the organization that I work for. And at Build Up, we have decided to measure the polarization footprint in Kenya. We've started in one country. We're going to do so through 4 measurements. The first one has to do with finding a classification of the contents that are shared on the net, that try to make people ashamed, or that are trying to harass other people. And this affective polarization. So that's the first measure. How many contents are there that are using this affective polarization language? And the second one has to do with looking at the comments under those contents. If there's affective polarization, but everybody speaks against it, there will, well, it has, I suppose, Well, some of the projects we've seen now on digital education have been very effective, but what we see is polarizing contents, but nobody says anything against them, nobody opposes them. So that means that there's an acceptance of polarization. That's point number 2. And point number 3 is that we have to understand how the audience of the platform is split. The people that listen to these opinions are not listening to these other opinions, and the people that listen to these people don't listen to these other people. So that means that there's a division of the audience, which is the 3rd measure. And the 4th would be that we're going to ask 5,000 people in Kenya, in a representative sample, about their experience in the case of platforms. Have they had negative experiences? Of what kind? And what are they all about? So with those 4 measures, we're going to create this footprint in Kenya. So, and once you've done that, what can we do? Well, you can ask me about this in 18 months or so, but I can give you our idea because we are now speaking to the government of Kenya. And right now what they are doing is they are readdressing a bill that governs all of the social cohesion processes in the country. And we are working with the committee that is implementing this bill so that they can introduce this idea of thinking how polarization is affecting the conflict and how this polarization footprint shows how it is affecting the whole thing. But this is the case of Kenya. But I think that there are many other governments that right now are willing to introduce legal initiatives that take into account this polarization footprint. For instance, in Ireland, the Regulatory Committee for the Media, they've introduced legislation that speaks about algorithms directly. They don't talk about the moderation of content. They talk about the need to change algorithms. And this is a legal opportunity that is open in many countries. Okay, tomorrow at 3 o'clock at Cuna, Helena and another group in a specific lab on democracy, and then on Thursday and Friday here in Bilbao, the 8 social entrepreneurs that are working on this are going to be locked up in a flat here to discuss advanced regulations and speculative ideas to deal with horrible ideas. An applause, please. Right, and now a dream that I think it's worthwhile dreaming. Just imagine the next year we hold a similar event and that all the social entrepreneurs that come up onto the stage, that all the social entrepreneurs that come here are from Bilbao. And well, this we believe is an idea that should be disseminated, and we believe that it's a possibility. So let's now show slide with email address. Casilda, thank you very much. She's the director for the selection process of social entrepreneurs in Spain. And then later on over dinner, well, you can have a chat with her. But if you're one of these people, because you're working with AI for the common good in any field, and even if your impact is small, it doesn't make any difference. It will be big in the future. If we are capable of implementing scalability, we know everything about scalability at Soccer. So if you're one of these people, and even if the impact is small, it doesn't make any difference if it's your company, your family, or your school. But if you know somebody that is involved in this area, give us the name. Just the name, no CV, because we have researchers that are going to look up absolutely everything to see if they are social entrepreneurs or not. Take a picture now, because tomorrow you might remember somebody, you might not remember somebody tonight, but that's usually happens. Oh yes, I know that guy, that fireman, that doctor, that nurse, that teacher, because well, the social entrepreneur doesn't know that he's a social entrepreneur, is not aware of the fact. We have several social entrepreneurs in Ashoka from the Basque country, Anna-Lena who was selected in 2015 and who's radically humanized the nursing homes. Jose Mari, who was one of the first entrepreneurs. So I mean to say that we have social entrepreneurs that are very outstanding from this land. So we want to make this circle bigger and bigger and bigger, this circle that originated in Bilbao. And you know that social entrepreneurs are very effective, but we need to have thousands of people like these. So that's our goal. And without the BBK, we wouldn't even be here tonight. So if there's anybody that wants to collaborate, please speak to us. And now the final ending. It's an emotional musical and something very connected to the region. Because I suppose that you remember that the Mondragon Cooperative decided to celebrate its 60 years through what they call a cooperative symphony, which is called humanity at music. And there's been hundreds of cooperative workers who have participated in theatre, poetry, illustrations, and of course, music under the wonderful conductor Fernando Vázquez. It won lots of awards. It was premiered in 2019. I think it's Íñigo Albizuri who's here tonight. Right, bravo. Let's have an applause for Íñigo Albizuri for this wonderful thing you've done. Bravo. Well done. And well, I think that Fernando's not here, but in any case, he was in charge of the music. So we were dreaming once again, because as Antonio pointed out, well, this is something that we human beings know how to do. We have to develop that muscle. You know, a football player knows what a muscle is all about. So let's dream then. What would happen if we were to close tonight that started off with young people and the future, if we were to start with a techno version of the final piece of the symphony that is called Etorkizuna, which means future in Spanish, which in 2023 became the hymn of the international cooperative movement. And we have commissioned this work, or this version for you, and we have the perfect person, a young cooperativist from Bilbao, who's an expert in AI, and also a DJ. Are you ready? She's very ready. Lorea's here with us tonight. Lorea Argarate is the name of the young lady. Have you been given the mic? Okay, well, I'll leave her with you on the stage. Thank you very much, Antonella. Well, thank you all very much. It's a great pleasure to be able to close like this. As Antonella pointed out, we have Íñigo Albizuri with us, but in this symphony of the cooperatives, there were lots of people involved, lots of cooperative workers, and we used collective intelligence, and we've used it in the format of AI. And it's this new language that we all have to learn to read and write, because that's true. We have to learn and read and write and to ask ourselves questions. So, Íñigo, take it easy, because right now we're going to see things that are going to be interpreted by AI. We have included some of the local percussion called chalaparta, and it's funny to say that AI in Basque is nearly ia. Yeah, it's like we're nearly there, but I think that it's an opportunity to know that there's a long way to go, and that we have to carry on building these machines, and we should do so in a collaborative and cooperative manner. And I would like to close by thanking Fernando and Íñigo, on the one hand, for starting with this adventure and for transforming it into reality, and for allowing us to carry it out. And thanks to José Mari Luzarraga and to Ashoka, because I think that this something that AI will never be able to do, attracting so many people. And I was joking about this with Antonella. AI will never be able to break a leg when it dances. So thank you very much, and we're going to now play this song, which has a very super lyrics, and we're going to put it up on the screen so that everybody can follow what's going on. All of this has been created with AI. It's Cuba Lorea, Bestabaterian, and the one hand on the ground, another hand in the air. So with this message, we hope that we will all sing collectively, and I'm sure that some of you will be dancing in their seats. But anyway, thank you very much, and thanks for coming.
Brava! Brava!
And that's it. Okay, we hope that we've convinced that you can do things in a very efficacious manner by transforming many things. We hope that we've convinced you that this is a public debate, that you don't have to be afraid. You don't have to shy away from it. It's all about empowerment. But in any case, I love it because you have to empower yourself with our citizens. You have to get to know other people. And Not everything has to be in the hands of the governments of the Silicon Valleys. And now, in the ancient civilization, everybody's reading the book, The Dawn of Everything, and it explains that 20,000 years ago, before Christ, the human population already knew that it had to preserve the tools that promoted civilization and other tools that were of no use, and they just abandoned them. But we have a wonderful tool at their disposal that can help us change everything. And it's wonderful to say that this in Bilbao, you've changed everything. You've changed the entire city. You know what change is all about, okay? So we believe that this is the message. Tomorrow and the day after, we'll be working more at Kuna and all of these issues, and we're going to discuss what's going on. And once again, let's have a round of applause for all of the speakers today and the 30 social entrepreneurs from all over the world. Welcome to Bilbao. And this requires a very big effort, a brutal effort. And well, thanks to a team made up of many people, Anna Rochelle, who's in Amsterdam, and her colleague José Mari Luzárraga, our first entrepreneur in the Basque country. Where are you, José Mari? José Mari, are you not there? Yes. Let's have a round of applause for her and for him. And Maria Raskin and Ana Maria Martinez, who coordinated the entire event. And Ana and Maite Arango, who are co-leaders of this thing that we call Next Now, that brings together social entrepreneurs that are working in issues that are fundamental challenges for mankind. One of them is this, and 2 years ago we heard new longevity and the wonderful BBK team. And from Kuna, let's have applause for these people too. Okay, let's now dinner. And we're going to open up all the galleries. You can see the works of art. It's a beautiful occasion for you people. And let's all leave the auditorium with a wonderful piece composed by Psychologic AI on a song that is closely related to knowing how to use tools that is called You Know What I Need. See you next time. Bye-bye.